Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, and in particular we want to ask, can entrepreneurship be taught? We have three people to help us answer that question today, and I first introduce Cindy Wu. Cindy, tell us a little bit about your connection to entrepreneurship. Do you identify as an entrepreneur? At what point did you begin to think of yourself as an entrepreneur?
So my name is Cindy Wu, and I'm one of the founders of Experiment.com. And I think I accidentally became an entrepreneur. I think I identify more as a scientist, but most of my time now is spent running Experiment, and that makes me an entrepreneur.
Okay, we're going to learn a little bit more about Cindy's business as we go along. Tim Barch is here in the local area. Tell us about your connection to entrepreneurship.
Sure, welcome. Thank you. My name is Tim Barch. I'm from the area here. My connections really are around two large e-commerce businesses and what we do there, additionally supporting some of the local activities in the community and participating where I can around the startup community, entrepreneurs, and small businesses.
Okay. And David Burgess is in fact teaching entrepreneurship and is also an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about how you come to identify as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I consider myself more of a social entrepreneur than an entrepreneur, and I've done that since the early '90s in the nonprofit area, and I've taught entrepreneurship for a number of years at the University of Iowa and social entrepreneurship at Cornell College, and we started a company with partners in St. Louis called Nurture Energy, and we're an open innovation green energy company. And so it's been a interesting, successful learning experience, and I bring that to the classroom.
So I'm here as a learner. I teach at Cornell College also, and I direct an office called the Barez Center for Economics, Business, and Public Policy, and we try to engage our students with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. But I'm still learning, and I have been surprised, pleasantly surprised, to see how much activity there is in this region and how much support for entrepreneurship in the schools and in the business community. So let me start with Tim, who I think knows about some of the organizations that are cultivating new companies and providing some mentoring experience for entrepreneurs.
Sure. In the corridor here, we have a few opportunities. The most prominent at this point, really dedicated to the startup culture, is the Iowa Startup Accelerator, located here in Cedar Rapids down in the Nubo district. Down in Iowa City, similarly appointed to help entrepreneurs, is the University of Iowa. They have a venture school, which is a school or a series of classes that really teaches entrepreneurship. The Iowa Startup Accelerator is a traditional startup accelerator in the sense that they are sourcing from a wide set of candidates, companies that can come in and really grow quickly through relationships with mentors and things like that to ultimately join the world as successful businesses. Additionally, in the community here, there are events that really anybody can attend. There are things like 1 Million Cups, which is really every other week, which is a great event, free, and really a great chance to meet other like-minded professionals. Then there are other even lower key events like open coffee, where it's really no structure, but getting people of like minds together. And through those meetings, there are things that just sort of take place because two people get together with an idea and a company is born, or an idea is birthed. And then lastly, the other one I would bring up is occasionally, usually twice a year, there's Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend is usually an event that they gamify it a little bit, but you show up on a Friday night, and these are typically full-time professionals. They come on a Friday night and then work really nonstop till Sunday when there's a pitch contest and there's a winner declared. There's a company or a few companies that have actually gone on from those startup weekends to really either start off and run in a continued part-time mode, to even companies that have gone into accelerators and beyond as companies that go into additional seed rounds.
Okay.
Can I ask Tim a question? What are the prizes? Maybe the viewers would be interested to know. For Startup Weekend, do they get seed funding? Is it the recognition, the connections? What do they get?
I think that there is not a cash prize. There is the recognition and the connections. And I know that some people, it scratches typically a personal itch of what is the for companies, what is the opportunity to really explore an idea I've had. I've tested it now with other people, and now how can I maybe go a little bit further with it? So they've gone through, in a very accelerated, short time frame of a weekend, getting a few other people to jump on board with them, try an idea out, and really then test it in front of a committee or a panel of judges to see how does it rank. So
My colleague, Rebecca Sullins, and two of our students participated in a recent Startup Weekend. And my colleague outperformed me, and with one of our students. And they won the top prize in that competition. There were 10 teams. And their prize was a sort of a scholarship or free tuition to a subsequent event called Venture School, a kind of 6-week extension of that weekend experience. Yeah, Cindy did a Startup Weekend too, so she's going to tell us how that figures in her career here.
So Experiment came out of a Startup Weekend in Seattle. It was Startup Weekend EDU, and at that event, it was one of the best Startup Weekends I've been to because Vinod Khosla was there, Mitch Kapoor was there.
Wow.
And at the time, there was a company called Teach Street they were sponsoring. And so we didn't win the competition, and there was no cash prize. But what we did is we got all of these connections to the right people in Seattle that we should have known. And it put us in the right community over the course of a weekend. We got to work directly with those mentors, and I'm still friends with a lot of those people that I met that weekend today.
Right.
is Experiment the result of Startup Weekend, or was that just the beginning of your sort of foray into that area?
Experiment as an idea had existed before Startup Weekend, but that was the idea that was pitched by my co-founder, Denny. And so I would say Startup Weekend really helped us get started. It's the first time we pitched the prototype to a large audience.
David, what do you know about teaching entrepreneurship in the schools? So I know you're teaching one class at Cornell College, but you had some connections with the University of Iowa as well. Have you looked at other schools? Can you tell us something about how widespread this is? Or?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I taught a full course load at the University of Iowa for 14 years, and what I found most interesting, and why this is such a crucial time to have this discussion, is that the way entrepreneurship first of all has grown dramatically. I mean, I know the number of students getting certificates in the JPEC, the John Papajohn Entrepreneurship Center program at the university has grown. Maybe I'm guessing it's about 3 times over the last 10 years, by a factor of 3. But what has also changed is, over that span, is social entrepreneurship has taken off, not just in Iowa, all over the place. And that's not just because people think that's good, people who are teaching think that's good. It's because they're actually responding to the millennial generation of which Cindy is a part. That's people born between 1982 and 2003. And according to the Brookings Institution, 89% of millennials would prefer to purchase items from companies that have a social entrepreneurship mission, that they're doing some good in the world. And 63% would like their current employers to take a social entrepreneurship approach, donate to causes. And that's quite different. That 63% figure is different from the boomers and the Gen Xers, of which I'm a part, which is a little bit under 50%. And so what's happening is businesses are responding to the millennial generation, and because in entrepreneurship education, there's a need to prepare that generation to take leadership roles, as they very impressively are. And so when you're considering in 10 years, the millennials will represent 75% of the workforce, you're going to see that that's where entrepreneurship education should be focused, which is in social entrepreneurship. And that's what I'm passionate about. And what it basically means is any and every company can make a contribution to improving their niche, their community, and take a responsible position. So that's how I view it.
Are these terms that resonate with you, Cindy, in your?
Yes.
Yeah?
So social I think that I've always identified as a social entrepreneur. Experiment is a mission-driven for-profit company. And I actually think being mission-driven and caring about the social mission makes the company stronger and also likely to be more successful.
So define that mission for us. I'm not sure how far we've gotten there on.
So what we want to do is we want to create a world where anyone can be a scientist. So that means breaking down all of the barriers today that prevent anyone in the world from being a scientist. Right now we're mostly working with academic researchers, but a lot of times it's graduate students or undergraduates. And we also have worked with high school students to do things like send a hydroponic garden to the International Space Station.
So Tim, I'm going to tell you that David and I sometimes do battle. He told me all of this about social entrepreneurship and doing good, and I told him if I sell a pair of shoelaces to somebody with a broken shoelace, I've done good.
Sure.
So you're in a different kind of business. Is this
Yeah.
terminology and this focus familiar to you?
It's familiar as a consumer. It is not one that I'm familiar with from the business side of where we
Okay.
operate. Your idea is of value is one that I would describe to, that you are providing value in someone's shoelace, their shoe falls off when they walk, and now it no longer does. But so
Maybe the shoelace broke because they tried to pull themselves up by those shoelaces. Is that what it is? By themselves. Right?
But I think it's an interesting idea for established business, and maybe this is a mental block for myself, but it feels easier to start a business, you see, with Tom's Shoes or some other companies out there that have some sort of social good that they do. Established companies, I think, sometimes get a little bit of a bad rep. I'd be interested in David's thoughts there, where a company that is long established comes out with a social program. Are they pandering at that point? Is that really in the roots of the DNA of the company?
So I'd like to know, entrepreneurs sometimes sounds like a fancy word, and I wonder if there's a distinction between entrepreneurs and just small business person, or and the connection between innovation and invention and entrepreneurship. How much, when we use this word entrepreneurship, we have to be coming up with something brand new as opposed to just starting a business, which might be in a very familiar market with a very familiar product. Anybody want to take that?
Sure. I mean, even big established companies. I mean, my company consults with sometimes billion-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, and they are all at least the companies we have experience with, they are all trying to take an entrepreneurial approach in their own way, and so you can think about it as yes. Two people starting up a beautiful, brilliant idea like Experiment.com, or you can think of it as a Fortune 500 company trying to accelerate its research and development and speed to market and bring out new products to the marketplace, and that I would also categorize as an entrepreneurial approach. And so I think it covers all of that. And if I could, you asked a question about, is an existing company which has taken on a social entrepreneurship mission pandering? I mean, there are ways to label things. Certainly, a company like Philip Morris rebranding itself Altria, which sounds like altruism and trees and things like that, to appear like they're being, taking more of a social entrepreneurship perspective, let's call it. I would call that pandering. So there definitely are liars and schemers out there trying to use that label for their own purposes. But I think we should give credit where credit's due. When you see Walmart's coming out with stores that are the greenest retail stores ever, with literally green rooftops where they're growing vegetables on the roof, LED lights everywhere, you can do nothing but applaud them for that effort. Although I disagree with some of their sourcing and other things. But yeah, I think everyone's moving in that direction. It's really, really encouraging to see.
So Cindy is an alumnus of a very highly regarded incubator, Y Combinator. That's kind of for you computer science students out there, that has a special meaning. So tell us, let's shift our discussion towards what we're going to teach. If we think we can teach people how to be entrepreneurs, what are you learning when you join such an organization? And then we'll find out what these people and what kind of mentoring Tim has given to businesses and what David's teaching. But let's start with Cindy. What did you started out? You're an undergraduate student. You want to launch a company with a friend.
Yep.
And what'd you learn?
So Y Combinator is a 3-month program in Mountain View, and what Y Combinator does, they help you grow your business or your startup, and it's not you wouldn't do anything. I guess they would help you do what you intended to do. So if our mission is to fund science, then they help you accelerate that. There's a 3-month program, and during those 3 months, it's all about growth. So 3 things you should be doing are talking to your users, building product, and you should also exercise. So that means take care of yourself. And then after the course of 3 months, there's a event called Demo Day, where they bring in, I think now it's 1,000 of the best investors in the world, and you pitch for 2 minutes in front of that room. I think the value of Y Combinator is, 1, the partners. So the partners are all individuals that have built successful companies in the past. And then 2, it's the people that have already been funded by Y Combinator. So they've funded, I think, when we were in the batch, they'd funded over 500 companies. So you can lean on all of those founders, and when you have a question, you can reach out to that community. And that community is extremely responsive and extremely open with giving advice.
So Tim, I have some former students who went to the Boston Startup Institute, but a focus of their experience was learning some programming skills and sort of coming up to speed on how to build a business on the internet.
Sure.
Now, these particular students had many of these skills already, and they told me they thought the value of the experience was the connections they made to local businesses. They met somebody who had started a company and wound up working for that person. What are you teaching when you mentor people? How much of it is the technical and how much of it is something else?
I tend to focus less on the technology. For me, and I have found that generally speaking, most of the time the problem is not technology. We're trying to put a man on the moon, maybe. Right. But most of the companies that I've talked with, they will think it's a technology problem, but it is not. It is a customer-focused problem, a customer fit, maybe a pricing and marketing strategy problem. And so we face people that say, I know what I will talk to guys very early on in the startup phase, and they say, we know what we need to do. We need to plunk down $100,000 for some talent for developers to build this algorithm. But as we ask questions, and maybe other people with experience further on the road, that is what they think their key value proposition will be, and really they're making a lot of assumptions to get to that point. So they're going to put down a lot of capital and time before they ever know if they've got the right product. And so we try to ask questions earlier on around really customer focus. I think that is often something that's lacking. That's one thing that we traditionally don't see in a lot of the students that come in out of the college environment into the workplace, is the focus on the customer. It's what the entrepreneurial schools seem to be putting a lot of focus on, is understanding product market fit.
So David, before this discussion, I did some reading, and I encountered several articles that said American schools are training people to not be entrepreneurs. They're training them to be shift workers, to take orders, and we need a different kind of education. You used the phrase entrepreneurial approach a few minutes ago. Maybe you could define what that attitude or entrepreneurial approach is that you're trying to impart to your students.
Not because I'm trying to stay on message or on point, but that's because when I'm talking about this, I'm speaking from my heart. And I define, if I can be allowed to do so, I define a social entrepreneur as someone who loves to solve problems with love. And yes, I do fear that too much still entrepreneurship education is, and too much education in general. Watch Professor Robinson's TED Talk. I think it's the most watched TED Talk about imparting more creativity in schools. I think much, if not most, of our education is preparing compliant, reliable workers, the workforce. An entrepreneurial approach is much more passion-based. People are able to take risks, being inspired and empowered by others in startup weekends, friends, family, and that is exactly what this country and this world needs, and especially if you're talking about something like social entrepreneurship, where you're looking at a problem and trying to identify ways to solve that problem. That's what we're talking about.
Now, earlier today, Cindy talked to me about the environment in which she works. She started in Seattle, she moved to California, to the Silicon Valley, and she described that as providing a kind of supportive environment that she's not able to find in other parts of the country. On the other hand, Tim, you and I are living in Iowa a long time. I've been surprised in my career to see how much activity there is in this area. So maybe you can be the booster for Iowa for a moment, and then Cindy can take a turn telling us what's special about the Silicon Valley. Okay.
I think in the Cedar Rapids area in Iowa City, there seems to be, while there's maybe a global renaissance, it feels like, of entrepreneurship, startups. I think we all have the common names of Facebook and Google and Tesla.
Sure.
But at the same time, locally here, there are companies, there are activities that are really putting some meat and some substance on the bone. Specifically Startup Weekend, the 1 Million Cups, and really starting to connect people. And that snowball takes a little bit of time to kind of go and build and gain momentum. And I think that's starting to take place here in the corridor between Iowa City and Cedar Rapids. A lot of good things happening.
So tell us what's special about this place in California. Everybody's heard of it. A few of us have been there.
Is it how much it costs to rent a garage?
That's
to live in
probably
and start your business?
the worst part of San Francisco. The reason why we moved to San Francisco because of the people, and we stayed in San Francisco because of the people. What I see in a lot of founders in Silicon Valley is this ambition that I haven't seen elsewhere. It's a combination of people that are ambitious, persistent, and they get stuff done. So they set out with this really ambitious goal, and then they come back in 1 month and they've actually built it, or built like the very first version, and they can show you the very beginnings of what this vision looks like. So I think it's a combination of ambition and moving fast.
Could I repeat a couple things that you told my students at Cornell College today? Working to build experiment.com, 100-hour weeks all day, every day. 6 of you living and working in one room, and maxing out credit cards. All those things. That drive, that passion, that sacrifice is something that I think all students everywhere should look at as a model.
A lot of times when I meet founders, I always ask them, are you willing to do whatever it takes in order to make this successful? And I think it usually gets people to think. Some people say yes right away, and you're like, oh, this person clearly is going to, do anything in order to make sure this vision is complete.
So I'm going to read something from the newspaper here to provoke the next comment, I hope. Grace Thomas is a budding bakery owner. The 9-year-old with a passion for baking is a lot like your typical entrepreneur, dealing with obstacles as they arise. But Grace is a doll, an American Girl doll. So this is an effort to take the message of entrepreneurship to a younger age. I invited all of you, and I'm very pleased with the people we got for the panel today, but I learned in my reading in preparation that we have a person at the University of Iowa whose responsibility is to develop a curriculum on entrepreneurship for the elementary schools. And what's your take on that? So presumably most of these people will not start businesses, but we're hoping that they'll pick up some attitudes or habits or skills. What would those attitudes or habits or skills be for these many young people who, again, most of whom won't actually start a business? Few were in
maybe
charge.
they will.
What do you think?
I don't know. For me, I have a hard time with the idea of a doll. Specifically, I have 2 young daughters, and I walk down the aisles and just see pink for everything. And we often talk that pink is not a girls' color necessarily, like boys can like pink. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't know that that will have a lasting impact of a doll, if a child will make that connection from a doll to a bakery to, you know, Barbie and her car did not mean she was a car dealership owner. That is a leap that I don't think most people will make.
Okay.
So.
That's true.
Anybody else want to comment on entrepreneurship for very young people? Yeah?
You like teaching young kids science, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love helping young kids like become scientists.
Okay.
And I actually think if you think about it, a lot of kids do start businesses when they're young. Like I started a lemonade stand maybe
Yep.
for 3 hours one Saturday, and I made $5. And I think what we need to teach kids, I think we just need to teach this to everyone, is we need to teach them how to think critically. And I think that's what entrepreneurship provides, is you have to think critically about how you're going to take something and then provide value to someone else. So that could be selling it, that could be trading it. And I think giving kids more responsibility or more opportunities to do that is only going to be a good thing.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
humanity.
And to add to that, I think we need to get out of the mold of teaching kids entrepreneurship is making a buck any old way. Because sometimes you get that, you know, selling Girl Scout cookies with trans fats in them, stuff like this. Okay, it's not about just making a quick buck. It should be identifying a problem in your neighborhood, in your community, solving it in some creative way. And kids, man, are they great at that. So.
Kids are already starting businesses. I remember when I was a kid, I played Neopets a lot, and I had a shop on Neopets where I sold virtual goods to other kids.
Okay, so we just have 2 minutes left here, and in looking for these lessons we might want to share with everyone, I have noted that a lot of the terminology that's sort of penetrating this field of entrepreneurship comes out of the software development field. So maybe I can throw out a few words and you can say one or two things, then we'll wrap up here. Fail fast. What does that mean? What does it mean?
It means figure out if it's going to work or not as quickly as possible.
Okay, minimum viable product.
Build something that works as quickly as possible.
What's agile?
Adaptable and fast to adapt.
Okay.
Quick to adapt.
Well, this has been great, and maybe I think he's going to give me 30 more seconds, my producer here. Do you want to just say a thank you and goodbye, or one last word? Cindy?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, Chip?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, thank you. And social entrepreneurship is where it's at. That's my last word.
Okay, thank you all for this talk about entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Leon.
Did we hit the mark? Okay.